A single income life rarely collapses like a building in an earthquake. It usually fails the way real financial systems fail, quietly, then suddenly, after years of looking stable on paper. That is what makes it dangerous. The man inside it often feels responsible, disciplined, even respectable. He thinks he is managing life. What he does not yet see is that he is living inside a highly concentrated risk structure with excellent public relations. Picture a man in his early 30s, clean shirt, paid bills, a decent salary, no obvious chaos. He is not gambling. He is not drowning in consumer debt. He does not live like an idiot. And yet, almost every important variable in his life, housing, healthcare, transport, future family plans, his margin of dignity, is tied to one employer continuing to want him tomorrow. That is not merely income. That is dependency with a calendar invite. The usual advice treats this as a budgeting issue. It is not. It is a balance sheet issue, a labor market issue, a bargaining power issue, and above all, an architecture issue. A man can be efficient inside a weak structure for a very long time. In fact, efficiency often hides weakness. The tighter the routine, the easier it is to miss how narrow the bridge really is. That is why the right question is not, how do I stretch one income further? The right question is colder. How much power does this one income have over the terms of my life? Once you ask that honestly, the emotional tone changes. This is no longer about frugality. It becomes a conversation about concentration risk, optionality, and how many parts of a man's future can be frozen by one interruption. Trap 1. Mistaking income for power. A paycheck creates movement, and movement is easy to confuse with strength. The money lands, the bills clear, the account survives another month. A man feels functional, and society rewards that feeling with a certain respect. But power begins much later than income. Power begins when the interruption of income does not immediately push you into panic, retreat, or humiliation. Income keeps the machine running. Power gives you refusal. Income lets you pay. Power lets you wait. Income helps you survive a month. Power lets you survive a negotiation. Those are not the same thing. Many men with respectable salaries have liquidity for bills, but no leverage with life. That distinction matters more than most people ever admit. Trap 2. False stability. Single income living feels safer than it is because routine is sedating. Salary arrives on schedule. Bills leave on schedule. The apartment stays lit. The car keeps moving. The week repeats. That repetition feels like order, and order feels like security. But many systems look secure only because they have not yet been hit by an event large enough to reveal their narrowness. Economists have a term for this kind of blindness in other contexts. People mistake the absence of visible stress for the presence of resilience. A household can remain outwardly calm for years and still be one medical event, one layoff, one regional slowdown, or one exhausted quarter away from a completely different reality. Stability without shock absorption is not stability. It is delay. Trap 3. Your body becomes the balance sheet. In a one-income system, the man himself is the productive asset, the labor engine, and the continuity plan. His health is revenue continuity. His energy is bill-paying capacity. His focus is economic output. His mood affects the whole household's stability, whether anyone says it aloud or not. That arrangement sounds normal because it is common, but common is not the same as intelligent. A structure that requires one man to remain continuously employable, continuously healthy, continuously useful, and continuously available is not a structure built for freedom. It is a structure built for uninterrupted extraction. The wear accumulates slowly, but it accumulates all the same. Men often underestimate this because the damage rarely arrives as one dramatic event. It arrives as fatigue that lasts too long, as a body that recovers more slowly, as attention that dulls, as patience that shortens, as standards quietly dropping because the system cannot afford weakness in the one person carrying the structure. Trap 4. Becoming excellent at contraction. At first, cutting back is rational, then it becomes responsible, then it becomes identity. The single income man learns to compress life just enough to keep it affordable. Smaller room, older shoes, longer commute, fewer better rooms, less recovery, less access, less experimentation. Everything stays controlled. Almost nothing truly expands. This is where prudence quietly mutates into confinement. He becomes highly competent at preserving the floor and strangely weak at raising the ceiling. He can say no to pleasure. He can postpone purchases. He can survive on less. But the more dangerous question is whether he still knows how to build more, access more, earn with more leverage, and position himself for a larger future. Trap 5. Underfunding the machine that could have made you stronger. This trap is elegant because it looks like maturity from the outside. The man becomes so careful that he starts starving the very system that could have upgraded his future income. He delays training, keeps inferior tools, avoids better software, refuses to spend on presentation, health, network, or access because every such expense feels non-essential under pressure. But economic strength is not built only by minimizing leakage. It is also built by funding capacity. Markets do not pay you for how beautifully you preserved every dollar. They pay you for output, scarcity, judgment, speed, and bargaining power. A tired body, slow tools, weak access, and low-grade environments reduce all of those quietly. This is not thrift, it is delayed erosion. The man thinks he is reducing downside. In reality, he may be amputating upside. He protects the account by weakening the system behind the account. That trade feels sensible in a tight month. Repeated for years, it becomes one of the most expensive forms of false prudence a man can practice. Trap 6. Arriving too late to ownership. The narrow universe of single-income living usually keeps money in only 2 states, spent or stored. That feels disciplined, but wealth rarely changes trajectory through those 2 states alone. Trajectory changes when money becomes attached to ownership, portfolio assets, equity, a side business, software, royalties, audience assets, distribution, intellectual property, or a rare skill system that keeps attracting demand after the workday ends. Men arrive late because defense feels moral and ownership feels uncertain. Saving looks adult, ownership looks exposed, but the deeper risk is often not that a man tried to build too early, it is that he spent too long inside a structure where every future improvement still depended on hours sold. Salary sustains, ownership changes altitude. Trap 7, the wrong sequence steals years. A strong financial life is built in layers. First liquidity, then resilience, then controlled exposure to upside, then ownership, then scale. The problem is not that many men build the base. The problem is that they mistake the base for the destination. They protect the floor for so long that they never raise the ceiling. This is how a man wakes up at 34, where he thought he would only stay until 28. Then, at 38, still circling the same financial questions, only now in a better jacket and a more tired body. The tragedy is not recklessness. It is missequenced discipline. It is years spent proving responsibility inside a structure too narrow to reward that responsibility properly. Nothing explodes when this happens. That is the elegance of the trap. No cinematic downfall, no obvious scandal. Just time passing with excellent manners, while a man tells himself he is being sensible, even as the architecture of his life remains too narrow for the future he says he wants. So what should a serious man do once he sees these 7 traps clearly? First, stop flattering dependence. If one paycheck carries everything, name it honestly. Second, separate defensive capital from expansion capital. Money for breathing room should not be forced to do the work of growth capital. Third, audit earning power with a harder question. What part of my life still functions if my main salary disappears? If the answer is almost nothing, then the mission becomes obvious. Build stronger skill leverage. Build wider access. Build earlier ownership. Build compensation with upside. Build a second stream. Build a body and mind maintained like productive assets, not neglected like they are free. Build a life where one employer no longer has the power to rewrite your future with one decision. That is the real point. The tragedy of single income living is not that a man worked hard. Not that he sacrificed, but that he sacrificed inside a structure too narrow to return the full value of that sacrifice. Income helps a man operate, power lets him refuse, and until he builds that difference into the architecture of his life, stability will remain more fragile than it looks. And once a man understands that, the next question becomes sharper than the first. Not, how do I manage one income better? But, what do I build first so one income never holds this much power over me again? That is where the real financial game begins, not at the point of income, but at the point where dependency starts to lose ground.